Hello everybody. This is kind of a new thing. I'm just doing like a quick update video because this just in, Wizards dropped the ban hammer on standard and even modern. So as you can see here, the banned and restricted announcement just went up a moment ago, and they banned 3 cards in standard, which is probably the most cards banned in standard since the Affinity debacle way back when the first Mirrodin set came out, and they eventually banned like cards in I think 2 waves to try and break the deck. So they banned Emrakul, the Promised End, Smuggler's Copter, and even Reflector Mage. I think Reflector Mage is the most surprising one that a lot of people didn't expect or see coming. Smuggler's Copter is kind of one of the bans that people would expect if they ban something, just because the card basically makes every creature deck a 56 card deck, because your deck list starts with 4 Smuggler's Copters and then comes the rest of your deck, no matter what kind of creature heavy deck you're playing. It doesn't even have to be aggro, like Delirium, Green-Black Delirium is not an aggro deck and still plays Smuggler's Copter usually. And yeah, Emrakul was kind of the card that people were like talking about needing to be banned and wanting to see banned, and Smuggler's Copter being kind of like the secondary thing there, and mostly a diversity ban, because it's kind of bad if all the decks in standard that play creatures basically are 56 cards plus 4 Smuggler's Copter. It's just more interesting if the decks are 60 cards and more or less 60 different cards, rather than all decks being 56 different cards plus 4 of the same. Also, the card made certain cards a lot worse, like Sorcery Speed, Removal, and Planeswalker, things that Wizards has been pushing quite a bunch recently, which is also part of what they said in their explanation for why they did that. And yeah, Emrakul became an increasing problem, especially with the release of Etherworks Marvel, cheating it into play fairly consistently on turn 4 if they manage to find an Etherworks till then. Setting up the energy and having the 4 mana on turn 4 usually is not a problem. Sometimes they can even do it on 3 with a Servant of the Conduit. And they also have a good control shell around it with Kozilek's Return and stuff to make sure that he definitely wins. And yeah, that was just not particularly fun, and usually a resolved Emrakul, no matter how you resolve him, ended the game, and even if they could stop the Emrakul itself, that trigger still was pretty powerful and devastating opposing boards. But yeah, Reflector Mage is kind of surprising, but yeah, the card is really powerful. It already seemed pretty pushed from the beginning, given how much tempo it generates. Like Manowar has always been a good card in the past, and like way back in the past, and this gets an extra toughness, and also the fact that it basically sets up a Meddling Mage effect on the card for 1 turn, might mean that the opponent later in the game, rather than not being able to play the creature you bounced, has no play at all, because all they have to replay is that creature, which generates even more tempo, more waste of mana. It does not only give you the tempo of the casting cost of the creature you bounce, it also gives you the tempo of the mana the opponent wastes the turn after, because he cannot fully use his mana on that turn and setting him further back. So yeah, these are 3 very interesting bans, and a lot of bans for standard. I'm gonna talk about all the bans more in detail in this week's article, so stay tuned for that. And another quick talk about the modern bannings. Gitaxian Probe is pretty interesting to me. Like, some people have been calling for that ban. I think Jeff Hoogland was one of them, who like wrote an article on how to fix modern a while ago, I think on MTG Card Market as well. And Gitaxian Probe was one of the cards he advocated banning. I am a bit split on it, but yeah, I can see the explanation that Wizards gave, that the card just makes turn 3 or earlier kills more likely, because there's decks that benefit from the supposed drawback of paying life, like Suicide, for example, and even Infect benefits from having a spell that costs no mana to decrease the cost of Become Immense and stuff like that. And the other aspect is that it also helps you set up that turn 3 all-in kill, because you can actually check without having to spend mana if the coast is clear, because a lot of these kills require you to use all your mana on the kill, so you would not have mana to play a spell that costs mana to see if the coast is clear, and Probe lets you reduce the cost on your Become Immense, for example, and see if they have a removal to blow you out and let you plan accordingly, or simply just kill them then and there and stuff like that. So yeah, 0 mana cards always have had the potential to be a problem in bigger formats, so Gitaxian Probe is not any different. It's basically replacing itself for almost free and gives you perfect information in a game that's meant to be a game of imperfect information. So yeah, that's what's up with Gitaxian Probe. And the rebanning of Grave Troll is pretty interesting. I mean, I think it's nice to see that they are willing to reevaluate their decisions, like unbanning cards that have never been legal in Modern, like Grave Troll. I like did it with Grave Troll a while ago, and then but also being willing to reban them again if it turns out, while they have not been legal in Modern before, they also shouldn't have been legal in Modern, so they just get put back on the banned list. Although, to be fair, by the time they unbanned this, the card was like barely relevant, and only cards that they basically printed and released after they unbanned Grave Troll made Grave Troll the big threat that it is right now, and is the reason why they had to ban it. I mean, they gave us Prized Amalgam and what's the name of the card? They mentioned it in here, I forgot the name. Oh yeah, Cathartic Reunion, the discard 2 draw 3 spell that made Dredge so much more consistent and so much more explosive early on. And yeah, now Grave Troll went from a reasonable and very unexciting unban to a very reasonable ban again, because Dredge has been a top deck in Modern for quite a while now, basically since Prized Amalgam and Cathartic Reunion exist, and it forces you as usual to just play cards that are mostly only good against Dredge and not very relevant against most other decks, and also causes a lot of fairly uninteractive, unfun games, as Dredge has always done, which is why the Dredge mechanic in and of itself was mostly basically a mistake that kept blowing up into Wizards' faces over and over since its existence. But yeah, there you have it. Pretty big ban hammer, very big surprise to a lot of people, I think. Some people hoped and or might have expected Emrakul to go, but probably not a whole lot else, and Emrakul going was mostly more a hope without a lot of expectation for it to actually happen, at least from what I read from people, because they just expected that Wizards is kind of gonna play it safe, and standard bans have been a more conservative thing in the past anyway, like they don't do that often and try to avoid it, but this time, man, they came down hard on standard. But I think it's gonna be a great thing going forward. Standard was pretty stale since Kaladesh is out. It mostly was like 2 or 3, maybe 4 decks, like 3.5 decks, competing, mostly Green Black Delirium and Flash. After a while, Red Green Aetherworks got back into the mix, and occasionally vehicles can like mix things up a bit here and there, but mostly it was Copter and Emrakul just suppressing the format in a huge way and making diversity and creativity a pretty hard thing to pull off if you also want to be successful and win the majority of your matches. Alright, let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this kind of like newsflash and reaction to like things happening in the games that I'm covering, and expect a more in-depth review of these bans and their effect on the format and my thoughts and stuff in this week's article. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy the fresh new standard and modern world, and see you in my article on Wednesday. Bye.